Most people don't lose the day at night. They lose it the moment they open their eyes. Before they even get out of bed, they've already surrendered to noise, to distraction, to urgency that doesn't belong to them. The Stoic doesn't wake up to be pulled. He wakes up to lead. Mornings are not a blur to survive. They are the foundation you lay for everything else. If your first thoughts are weak, reactive, or scattered, the rest of the day will reflect that chaos. But when your morning is rooted in clarity, silence, and purpose, the world doesn't shake you because you've already anchored yourself within. We live in a world that trains you to be reactive from the first second. Check your phone, scroll, reply, worry. But imagine this instead: waking with presence, moving with intention, thinking before absorbing, choosing the direction of your inner current before the external winds arrive. That's power, that's mastery, and that is the essence of the Stoic morning. Not rushed, not chaotic, not owned by the world, but centered, composed, directed by will. This episode is not about productivity hacks or motivational cliches. It's about reclaiming the one moment of the day you can fully own, your morning. Because how you rise is how you live. And the person who wins the morning doesn't just win the day. He wins himself. 1. Start with stillness, not screens. Before the world speaks, you must listen to yourself. That's the truth most people forget the moment they wake up. They reach for their phone before they reach for their breath. They check notifications before they check in with their thoughts. They scroll through other people's chaos before they've even asked themselves, what do I need today? What matters right now? And just like that, their inner space is no longer theirs. It's been rented out to noise. But the Stoic doesn't start the day reacting. He starts with stillness, not because it's trendy or aesthetic, but because stillness is strength, it's clarity, it's command over the mind before the world has a chance to pull it apart. You see, the first few moments after waking are sacred. They are not random. Your brain is shifting from deep rest into a heightened state of awareness. It's absorbing, it's vulnerable, and whatever you feed it first becomes the lens through which you experience the rest of the day. So the question is, are you beginning your day by grounding yourself or by scattering yourself? Let's be honest, we've all had those mornings. You wake up, check a message that sparks stress, then an email that reminds you of a deadline, then social media that makes you compare your life to someone else's filtered success. All within 10 minutes. And suddenly your heartbeat is faster, your mind is spinning, your focus is gone, and yet you haven't even left your bed. That's not waking up. That's surrendering before the battle begins. A Stoic understands that how you meet the morning is how you meet life. If you begin with noise, your day becomes noise. If you begin with stillness, your day gains direction. And that stillness can take many forms. Silence, slow breathing, mindful stretching, even just sitting with a warm drink while doing nothing. What matters is not what it looks like, but what it does for your inner world. Stillness doesn't mean emptiness. It means presence. It means resisting the urge to be immediately stimulated and giving your mind time to remember what it values before the outside world tells it what to chase. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." But how can you say anything to yourself if someone else's voice is the first one you hear? Think of stillness like a weight room for the mind. Every time you resist checking the screen, you're training your attention. You're strengthening the muscle that allows you to stay focused when distractions arise. And that muscle isn't just useful in the morning, It's what allows you to be grounded in meetings, present in conversations, and composed in moments of stress. There's another layer to this too. Stillness builds identity. Because when you choose silence over noise, you're telling yourself, I am not at the mercy of the world. I move on my terms. I protect my space. That kind of self-respect compounds. It changes how you speak, how you work, and how you react. People feel it in your presence, that quiet certainty that you are centered, not swayed. So tomorrow, don't just wake up, arrive. Don't jump into other people's lives. Return to your own. Give yourself 5 minutes, no screen, no input, just you, your breath, and a question worth asking. What kind of day do I want to live? The answer might not come immediately, but the silence is the doorway. And if you fail, that's fine. Try again the next day. What matters is not perfection, it's repetition. Because the one who masters the first moments of the day begins to master the moments that follow. 2. Anchor into intention, not distraction. Most people don't realize how quickly their mind becomes hijacked. It doesn't take much, a random headline, a message, a calendar alert, and suddenly they're not living their day, they're reacting to it. The mind, like a ship, needs an anchor. Without one, it drifts wherever the current goes. And in a world designed to pull your focus in 1,000 directions, the Stoic learns to drop that anchor early, not into tasks, not into urgency, but into intention. Ask yourself, what am I aiming for today? Not just in terms of tasks or goals, but in your way of being. Do you want to move through the day with patience, with clarity, with strength? That's the real purpose of anchoring into intention. It's not about what you do, but how you do it. Intention gives shape to the formless hours ahead. It turns a random Tuesday into an opportunity to become who you've chosen to be. But here's the truth. If you don't define your intention, the world will define it for you. You'll be told what to care about, what to fear, what to chase. And little by little, you'll find yourself exhausted, not from effort, but from misalignment. The Stoic doesn't allow this. He wakes up and decides. He picks a direction. He names his principles, because even if the day gets messy, and it will, he can return to that internal compass and reset. Think about this practically. Most people wake up and go straight into a blur of habits. Coffee, social media, emails, rushing out the door. There's no moment of pause, no check-in, no clarity. But what if you gave yourself 60 seconds, just 1 minute, to ask, how do I want to show up today? What would it look like to be intentional with my time, my words, my energy? That question alone changes everything. Intention is not about control, it's about consciousness. It's about stepping into the day with your eyes open, your values clear, and your mind prepared to choose rather than react. Even if the day throws you off, the fact that you began with intention makes it easier to return to that mindset. It's your mental home base. There's a reason why ancient philosophers emphasized morning reflection. Marcus Aurelius would write in his journal at dawn, reminding himself of what kind of man he wanted to be that day, not because he was already perfect, but because he understood how fragile the mind can be in the face of distractions. And if you want to live on your own terms, you have to build that habit of choosing your direction before the world gives you one. And this isn't about lofty ideals. It's about small, powerful questions. You might write down a single word each morning: presence, discipline, calm. Let that word be your intention. Let it sit with you. Let it inform your decisions when things get noisy. And they will get noisy. But that's the point. Your intention isn't supposed to protect you from chaos. It's supposed to remind you of who you are inside the chaos. So start anchoring, not into tasks, not into pressure, but into purpose, into how you want to live today, not just what you want to do. That is the core of Stoic action. Not speed, not noise, not frenzy, but deliberate directed motion. If you begin your day grounded in that, you won't just survive the day, you'll shape it. 3. Mornings shape momentum. There's something almost invisible about the way momentum builds. You don't always notice it happening, but you feel the effects. One tiny action leads to another. A small win creates the energy for a second. A clear decision in the first hour can echo into every moment that follows. That's why mornings matter more than most people admit. They don't just start your day, they set it. They create a rhythm, and that rhythm either empowers you or erodes you. The Stoic doesn't hope to have a good day. He builds one, brick by brick, starting with his own behavior. He understands that momentum is not mystical, it's mechanical. You do something difficult early, and suddenly you've activated strength. You keep a promise to yourself before breakfast, and suddenly self-trust gets a little stronger. You hold silence instead of reacting to noise, and the rest of the day feels more steady. None of these actions are dramatic, but they compound. They create a current, and that current becomes identity. Here's what most people get wrong. They think a chaotic morning doesn't matter as long as the rest of the day goes well. But that's like shaking a snow globe and then wondering why it takes so long for things to settle. The mental energy it takes to recover from a rough start is far greater than the energy it would have taken to begin with structure. The cost is hidden, but real. And over time, it adds up in lost focus, lost calm, lost confidence. So what does momentum look like in practice? It's not about being hyper-productive or packing your morning with activities. It's about being intentional with just enough action to generate clarity. It could be 5 minutes of breathing, 10 minutes of journaling, a short walk without your phone, a glass of water before caffeine. The point is not the task itself. It's the message you're sending to your mind. I choose how I begin. And once you've chosen that, the next choice becomes easier. Because success isn't about massive leaps. It's about small repetitions. The Stoic doesn't chase intensity. He respects consistency. He knows that a morning grounded in principle leads to a day that doesn't fall apart at the first sign of friction. And when that kind of momentum becomes your habit, it doesn't just shape your morning, it reshapes your identity. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." If that's true, then you are not defined by what you intend to do at 5 p.m., but by what you choose to do at 6 a.m. The early hours are not just hours. They are mirrors. They reflect your discipline, your values, your level of self-respect. And once you realize that, the idea of rushing through the morning starts to feel like a betrayal of yourself. So the next time you think of skipping your morning routine, remember this. It's not about the routine. It's about the trajectory. One moment of intention leads to another. One mindful choice leads to better ones. And the man who starts strong, not loud, but centered, carries that strength into every decision after. Start slow if you need to. Start small, but start with purpose, because every day has a direction, and the morning decides where it begins. 4. Discipline begins with how you rise. Discipline isn't born in dramatic moments. It's built in the quiet ones, and there's no moment quieter, no space more honest than the one between waking up and choosing your first action. That's the real test. Not when the world is watching, not when motivation is high, but when the alarm goes off and the bed feels warm. When no one would judge you for snoozing, and no one would notice if you delayed. That's when discipline speaks, or stays silent. The Stoics believed that self-command was the root of all freedom. If you can't command yourself to rise, to move, to begin, then how will you face anything greater? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, "You were born to do what a man must do. So why are you still in bed?" It wasn't self-punishment. It was a ritual of remembering. Remembering that discipline isn't about harshness, it's about alignment between who you say you want to be and who you're willing to be at 6 a.m. Rising early isn't a badge of honor. It's a decision. It's a way of signaling to your mind, I act even when I don't feel like it. And that simple act, getting up when you said you would, creates a ripple effect. It strengthens identity. It tells the subconscious, I can trust myself. And trust, when repeated, becomes momentum. That's why the first act of the day isn't just about time, it's about character. But here's where most people go wrong. They think discipline has to be severe, that it means forcing yourself to wake up at 4 a.m., running 10 miles, or diving straight into work. That's not what we're talking about. The Stoic discipline isn't performative. It's principled. It's not about how early you rise, but how honestly. Did you honor your intention? Did you meet yourself with strength instead of excuses? Did you get up because it matters to you, not because someone else told you to? Discipline is also not limited to action. Sometimes it's restraint. Choosing not to check your phone, not to rush, not to fill the silence with noise, getting up early but staying centered, moving with purpose, not panic. That is the deeper level of mastery, because anyone can be busy, but it takes presence to move with discipline. There will be days when rising feels hard, when you're tired, overwhelmed, or tempted by comfort. That's human, but even then, especially then, you have a choice. And every time you choose to rise with intention, you make that muscle stronger. You reinforce the message that your life is not ruled by mood, but by values. Over time, that discipline becomes who you are. It shows in your posture, in your tone, in the way you approach challenges later in the day. You become more anchored, less shaken. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. And it all starts not in the gym, not at your desk, but in that one private moment when the alarm goes off and you choose to rise. So tomorrow, don't ask, do I feel like it? Ask, who am I becoming by the way I rise? That one question can rewire your mornings and, slowly, your life. 5. Reflect before the world intrudes. Before you let the world in, pause long enough to hear your own thoughts. That's the heart of this point. In a society that trains us to wake up and immediately react to emails, messages, updates, demands, reflection becomes a radical act of self-respect. It's the difference between carrying your own thoughts or being burdened by everyone else's. And a Stoic understands, if you don't start your day from the inside out, you will live it from the outside in. Reflection in the morning doesn't have to mean a journal filled with profound insights or pages of poetry. It can be something much simpler and more powerful. A question: what kind of person do I want to be today? What would it look like to move through this day with courage, patience, or presence? These aren't just ideas, they're anchors. They give your mind something steady to return to when the day gets noisy. And it will get noisy. Think about it. When was the last time you paused before checking your phone, before rushing into conversation, before letting the headlines or someone's bad mood set your emotional tone? Those few minutes of silence in the morning are not a luxury, they're a necessity. Without them, your mind becomes a sponge, soaking up whatever it touches first, and usually that's not peace, it's pressure. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, and nothing feeds that imagination like unchecked inputs. But when you take time to reflect before the inputs arrive, you build a filter. You decide what's worth your energy. You remember what matters to you, not just what's loud." This reflection might be quiet. It might happen while sipping coffee, or staring out the window, or sitting on the edge of your bed before the first step. It's not the setting that matters, it's the intention. You are choosing to meet the day from a place of awareness, not reaction. And in that choice, you regain something rare: sovereignty over your state of mind. A good morning reflection also prepares you for friction. It reminds you that discomfort is coming, that someone will test your patience, that plans might fall apart, that things may not go your way. But instead of being surprised by these moments, you're ready. You've already rehearsed your response in your mind. You've reminded yourself that your values matter more than your moods. That's not just philosophy, that's preparation. And it's deeply personal. No one sees it, no one praises it. But it's in those unseen minutes that your identity is strengthened. Because every time you reflect before the world intrudes, you're declaring that your mind is not a dumping ground. It's a temple, and only what aligns with your principles is allowed to enter. So the next time you wake up, don't just jump into doing. Sit, breathe. Ask yourself something that matters. What am I avoiding? What am I grateful for? What would make this day meaningful, regardless of what happens? Even one honest answer is enough to shift your entire direction. Because the Stoic doesn't wait for silence, he creates it. Not because life is slow, but because his spirit demands space. And it's in that space, before the world intrudes, that clarity is found and carried into everything that follows. 6. Own your first hour. There is a hidden battlefield in your day, and it's not your deadlines, meetings, or obligations. It's the first hour after you wake up. That hour sets the tone for everything, not because it's dramatic, but because it's formative. The way you handle those first 60 minutes determines whether you're living your life or just catching up to it. The Stoic knows this. He doesn't drift into his morning, he claims it. That first hour isn't left to chance, noise, or randomness. It's deliberate, directed, owned. Why does the first hour matter so much? Because that's when your mind is at its most absorbent, most impressionable. It's like wet cement. Whatever you pour into it, stillness or chaos, clarity or confusion, will harden and hold shape for the rest of the day. And most people don't even realize it. They waste that hour on autopilot, scrolling, reacting, rushing. By the time they wake up, it's already noon, and the day is half gone. To own your first hour means to create a container around it, a space that's protected from intrusion, not just physical, but mental. You wake up and decide, these minutes belong to me, not my inbox, not the news, not anyone else's agenda. That decision alone, to defend your first hour, is an act of personal sovereignty, and sovereignty builds strength. What goes inside that hour is up to you. It doesn't have to be rigid. It doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to be yours. Maybe it's 10 minutes of stretching. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's sipping coffee in complete silence while thinking about your values. The activity isn't the point. The ownership is. Because when you start the day by honoring yourself, you're more likely to spend the rest of it honoring what matters. Contrast this with the opposite. You wake up, check your phone, get sucked into someone else's crisis, forget to eat properly, rush out the door, spill coffee, get stuck in traffic. and by 9 a.m., your nervous system is fried. You're not calm, you're reactive. You're already behind, and you tell yourself, I'll get it together later. But that later never really comes. Why? Because you never claimed your time. You let the world take it. Epictetus reminded us, no man is free who is not master of himself, and mastering the first hour is one of the simplest but most powerful ways to reclaim that freedom, because discipline is not just about control. It's about rhythm. And when your morning has rhythm, your mind has direction. But let's be real, life happens. Some days things don't go as planned. You oversleep. Someone needs you early. The routine breaks. That's fine. The goal isn't perfection, it's ownership. Even 5 minutes of intentional space can change your trajectory. Even one moment of reflection can shift your energy. You don't need an ideal morning, you just need a claimed one. So start by asking yourself, what does my ideal first hour look like? Not what others are doing, not what some book says, but you. What fills you with clarity? What centers your focus? Then protect it, even from yourself, especially from your impulses. Because when you own your first hour, you don't just prepare for the day, you shape it. You create a psychological contract with yourself. I will not be ruled by noise. I will not begin in chaos. I will lead from within. And that kind of leadership? It shows up in every conversation, every task, every challenge, quietly, powerfully, unshakably. 7. Rituals cultivate presence. In a world addicted to stimulation and speed, presence has become a lost art. Most people move through their mornings like they're racing against something, but they can't even name what. They brush their teeth while scrolling, eat while replying, walk while worrying. There's no stillness, no awareness, just momentum without meaning. But the Stoic doesn't rush blindly. He slows down, not out of laziness, but out of respect. He creates rituals. And those rituals are not just habits, they're anchors for the soul. A ritual is a deliberate act done with awareness. It's not something you rush through, it's something you enter into. Whether it's making your bed, lighting a candle, drinking a glass of water slowly, or sitting in silence for 2 minutes, the act itself is simple. But when done with presence, it becomes sacred. Why? Because it reminds you that life is not just what happens around you, it's what you choose to notice, what you choose to honor. Most people confuse routine with ritual. A routine is something you do on autopilot. A ritual is something you do with intention. The difference is consciousness. The Stoic embraces that consciousness because it brings him back to the present. And in the present, there's clarity, there's strength, there's space to choose who you're going to be, not just what you're going to do. Let's be clear. Rituals don't have to be complex or ceremonial. In fact, the simpler they are, the more powerful they become. Wiping the kitchen counter as a way of clearing the mind. Putting on your shoes slowly, like you're preparing for battle. Sitting for 1 full minute in silence before checking any device. These aren't grand gestures, but they're real. They're grounding, and they act as reminders. I am here. I am alive. I am choosing this moment. The philosopher Pierre Hadot once wrote that ancient philosophy wasn't just theory, it was a way of life, practiced through daily spiritual exercises. The morning ritual then becomes a form of spiritual training. It's not about performance, it's about remembrance. Remembrance of your values, of your strength, of the fact that you are not here to be swept away by the current of the day, but to walk into it with clarity. And there's a quiet confidence that grows when you do things the same way, with the same awareness every morning. You begin to notice more. You begin to need less. You begin to feel stable, even when life around you is unstable. That's the effect of ritual. It doesn't just prepare you for the day, it prepares you to meet yourself. And in that meeting, you begin to find something rare. Consistency not in outcome, but in presence. You stop measuring your worth by how much you got done and start measuring it by how honestly you showed up. That shift is subtle, but it's everything. So ask yourself, what rituals bring me back to myself? Start small, one act, one moment, one breath, but do it every morning. Not to chase productivity, but to cultivate depth, not to impress others, but to reconnect with your own awareness. Because in a world that wants you distracted, forgetful, and reactive, a person who is calm, aware, and present is powerful beyond measure. 8. Control the tone of your day. You don't control everything that happens in a day, but you do control how you enter it. That's the truth most people overlook. They think mood is something that just happens to them. They wait for the right vibe, the right energy, the right moment. But the Stoic doesn't wait. He sets the tone. He becomes the author of his emotional atmosphere. And that authorship begins the moment the day begins. Every day has a tone, not just a schedule. That tone influences how you perceive challenges, how you respond to people, how you speak to yourself. And what most don't realize is that this tone is fragile. If you don't shape it early, it gets shaped for you by noise, by tension, by randomness. But when you begin the day with even a small act of clarity, a calm ritual, a breath of gratitude, a meaningful intention, you're not just feeling better, you're leading better. Because tone is leadership. It's internal leadership. It's the silent signal you send to yourself that says, we're not rushing today, we're not panicking, we're not scattered, we are steady. Let's take an honest look at what sets your tone. Is it the urgency of an email, the tension of the news, the comparison trap of social media? If so, it's no wonder your day feels heavy before it even begins. You're entering the day defensive, not deliberate, and the Stoic knows that's a losing battle. He prefers to step in with intention, even if the world is chaotic, especially when it is. Think of the first 15 minutes of your morning like a musical note. Hit the wrong one, everything that follows feels off. But if you tune it right, the rest of the song plays smoother. That's not magic, that's emotional momentum. A calm tone creates calm decisions. A patient tone creates patient responses. A grateful tone reframes the entire day's story. And that's not poetic, that's practical. There's a saying in cognitive psychology: emotion precedes cognition. What you feel first influences what you think next. That's why tone matters more than tasks. A day begun with pressure is perceived differently than a day begun with poise, even if the events are exactly the same. You don't change reality by setting your tone, but you do change how you navigate it. So how do you control the tone? You take ownership of your inputs. You guard your attention like it's sacred. You treat your morning space like a temple, not a traffic jam. That might mean silence instead of stimulation, writing instead of scrolling, nature instead of noise. Whatever it takes to signal to yourself, I'm in command of how this day begins. And when, not if, the day challenges that tone, you return to it. That's the power of starting intentionally. You have a mental home base, a place you can recalibrate from. The person who starts the day with chaos has nowhere to go but further into the storm. But the person who starts with clarity has a compass. He can reset, he can breathe, he can begin again, because the tone of your day isn't set once, it's set again and again, through the way you speak, the way you walk, the way you respond to challenge. But the strongest tone is the one you choose first. And when you begin with that kind of clarity, it follows you, quietly, powerfully, and the world, whether it realizes it or not, starts to move around your tone, not the other way around. 9. Don't react, initiate. There's a quiet truth that separates those who live intentionally from those who merely survive the day. They don't wait to respond. They begin by initiating. In other words, they don't let the world decide how they'll feel, think, or act. They decide first. That's the Stoic's power. He doesn't get swept into the current. He walks into the river with his feet grounded, his mind clear, and his direction chosen. Most people spend their entire morning reacting to noise, to texts, to pressure, to emotions that aren't even theirs. The moment they open their eyes, they're pulled by the world, by habit, by impulse. But the Stoic doesn't confuse movement with mastery. He knows that rushing to respond is not the same as choosing to act. One is fear, the other is strength. Initiating means you speak first to your own mind before the world speaks to it. It means you write your thoughts before someone else writes your day. It means you start the work before being asked, care for yourself before being drained, give before needing, move before hesitating. It's not about being in control of outcomes. It's about being in control of your posture. And posture matters, because when you live in reaction, you're always behind. You become a mirror, reflecting whatever is around you. But when you initiate, you become a light. You shape the atmosphere instead of echoing it. You bring clarity into chaos. You don't wait to be calm. You bring calm. You don't wait to be motivated, you bring discipline. This is why the morning matters so deeply, because it's the only time of day when you can act without interference, before the demands come in, before the obligations stack, before the distractions multiply. That's when you decide, what will I start today? Who will I choose to be? What energy will I lead with? And that decision, even if it's small, creates a direction that can carry you far beyond those first moments. It doesn't have to be big. It could be as simple as writing a single sentence of gratitude, doing one push-up, sending one message you've been avoiding, reading one page of something that expands your mind. These actions are small, but they are statements. They say, I'm not waiting to feel ready. I'm not waiting for permission. I begin. And that mindset doesn't just change your morning, it changes your life. Seneca said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, and initiation is preparation. It's the rehearsal for the opportunities you haven't even seen yet, because the one who initiates early becomes the one who responds wisely later. He's not reactive because he's already acted. He's not thrown off because he's already rooted. There's a calm confidence in people who initiate. You feel it in their presence. You see it in their routines. You hear it in the way they speak, not rushed, not defensive, but clear. That clarity is not a gift. It's a practice. And it starts in the quiet morning hours when the world is still asleep. And you have the chance to shape something, not with noise, but with intention. So tomorrow, when the urge to react rises, pause. Ask yourself, what do I want to lead with today? And then do one small thing that reflects that answer, just one, because every act of initiation is a brick. And eventually, those bricks become the foundation of a self-directed life. 10. Win the morning, win the self. This final idea is simple, and it's everything. The morning is not just the beginning of the day, it's the beginning of you. It's the most honest mirror you have. Before the noise, before the expectations, before the performance, there's only you, your choices, and your values. And what you do in that space doesn't just influence your schedule, it defines your identity. Win that space, and you don't just win hours, you win yourself back. But let's be clear, winning the morning has nothing to do with how much you get done. It's not about checking off a list or hustling while others sleep. That's a shallow game. The Stoic plays a deeper one. Winning the morning means rising with intention, thinking clearly, moving deliberately, owning your time, honoring your energy, choosing your values before the world tries to sell you someone else's. And when you do that, when you begin the day on purpose, everything else flows differently. You speak with more conviction, you work with more focus, you walk into problems with a mind that's already been sharpened. Because you've already won something important, the battle against your lower self, against laziness, against distraction, against the temptation to delay your life one more day. There's a reason military leaders, philosophers, and high performers across time and culture have all emphasized the importance of mornings, not because there's magic in the clock, but because the discipline it takes to own that first hour builds a kind of self-respect you can't fake. It tells your subconscious, I matter, my time matters, my life is worth leading, not just reacting to. And that message compounds. It becomes belief, then action, then character. Even the Stoics, long before morning routines became a modern obsession, practiced this idea. Marcus Aurelius would journal in the early hours, not to be productive, but to prepare his mind, to align with virtue before the noise of the empire arrived. That's the kind of victory we're talking about. Internal, quiet, powerful, unshakable. And here's the beautiful irony. The more consistently you win your morning, the less you need to fix your life later. You're not always trying to recover from chaos or course correct, because your compass was already set, your tone already chosen, your mind already aligned. The day may still bring storms, but you meet them with clarity instead of confusion. Winning the morning isn't a finish line, it's a practice. One that will sometimes feel imperfect, messy, or short. But even then, if you show up for yourself with presence and honesty, you are winning. Because the goal isn't to impress anyone. The goal is to be in alignment with the life you say you want. So if you're tired of feeling like life is happening to you, start here. Not tomorrow, not next Monday. The next time you wake up. Claim the morning. Not with noise, not with panic, but with clarity. Give yourself a space to reflect, move, breathe, and begin with power. Do that, and something will shift. Slowly, permanently. Because the person who consistently wins their morning doesn't just get better at mornings, they become someone who's no longer negotiable with their purpose. And once that happens, no matter what the day brings, you've already won. Every day begins with a door, and how you open it determines everything. If you open it in a rush, the day pulls you. If you open it with presence, you lead. That's what Stoicism teaches us. That power isn't found in controlling the outside world, but in commanding the inner one, moment by moment, starting the very second you wake up. Your morning isn't just a routine, it's a statement. It tells the world, and more importantly yourself, what kind of person you're choosing to be. And that choice, that decision to start with stillness, with reflection, with strength, is what separates living intentionally from just going through the motions. Most people sleepwalk into their day and wonder why they feel lost. You don't have to be one of them. Own your breath, own your thoughts, Own your first step. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Because every strong day is built on one strong hour, and every strong life is built on the repetition of that 1 hour, over and over again. So tomorrow, don't just wake up. Rise with purpose. Don't just check your phone. Check in with yourself. And don't just react to the day. Create it. If this episode gave you clarity or strength, share it with someone who's ready to take back their mornings. Subscribe to keep walking with us. And remember, discipline doesn't begin with pressure. It begins with presence. And your power starts before the world even knows you're awake.